First of all, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be on here. Uh, I've known Steve for a while. Met him through this fellowship. Uh, through our both of our love for the big book, and and that's one of the good things that came out of COVID is got me on Zoom and got me to reach out. It's helped my recovery a lot. So, my name is Patrick. I'm an alcoholic. Uh, I suffer from a malady which many bottles have been a symbol of has been manifestations of my spiritual malady. And today I'm going to talk about steps 8 and 9. Uh, I have my sobriety date is 10 uh, the 5th of October 2017. So it's it's been pretty easy. Now I've had several attempts at sobriety, but this is the first time that I actually worked the steps and all 12 steps out of the big book, and it made me a believer. And every promise that that it tells me in that book has been my experience with carefully following these directions. I can't really talk about steps 8 and 9 without kind of giving a brief summary of why I need steps 8 and 9 because steps 8 and 9 are one of those things when I was early on the first few attempts in my 20s uh, at recovery was like steps 8 and 9, especially 9 was one of those that kept me from working any of the steps because it overwhelmed me a lot to think about having to go back and make amends to these people. Now, step 5 was another one. I was embarrassed of some things that I've done in my past that I didn't really feel, but step 9 especially like kept me from doing this program and never even starting. So like when I say that I'm an alcoholic, and like I said, I am an alcoholic. All I mean by that, and I didn't know this. I thought it was somebody that drank a lot, uh, drug addict, somebody that uses drugs, and I didn't know the difference. I didn't know the difference in what an alcoholic was and what it was until I got around some recovered alcoholics who started sharing their experience with uh, the difference between moderate hard drinker and alcoholic. And I was one of those guys that would tell you I knew what my problem was. Of course, I knew everything. I thought I did. Sometimes I still do. Uh, but I realized I know very little. Uh, and these guys figured it out a long time ago, what my problem was. And it was a lot easier pill to swallow than what I was thinking in my mind in the later years of my alcoholism, trying to quit because I thought it was a matter of willpower. I thought I could just stop. I should be able to stop, or I should be able to control it, like I have some friends that could, and I knew people that could be able to take it or leave it or choose. And when I got in the AA book and and got with some recovered alcoholics, and they started explaining to me like, "Hey, buddy, like Silkworth said in the doctor's opinion, like you just any factor like you you may be thinking that you're outright mental defective, full flight from reality, and these things may be true to some extent. But any picture of the alcoholic that leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. And as laymen, which I'm definitely a layman, uh, that that uh, that did this kind of it didn't mean a whole lot to me, but it definitely did carry more depth and weight than, and it made more sense. Like, hey, and I had some alcoholics around me that shared their experiences. Like, hey, bro, like you're not weak willed. You're not. Maybe somewhere along the lines you could control your use and your drinking. But sometimes, like maybe say like a diabetic, like I didn't start out like with diabetes. Like I ate enough ho hos and Mountain Dews, and my body chemistry changed, and it didn't. Whatever that does, like don't produce enough glucose or too much, whatever that is. But my body chemistry changed after years and years of use, and eventually I developed this phenomenon of craving, and uh, And what I mean by that is I just suffer. Like step one, I'm powerless. I'm not powerless because over people, places, and things. I'm powerless over my ability to control alcohol and what it does to my system because of my body being abnormally different. Like a person that's allergic has an abnormal reaction to a substance like say poison ivy, like they cannot will their body not to break out with hives and a rash or something, right? So like and this is the point that I got. Well, that was a lot easier pill to swallow than you just can't control it because you're weak willed or you're just not smart enough or you're not good enough or this that and the other. So like I was like, oh well, I get that, and they got me right off the get go. Uh, and that's just what happens when I what happens is this physical aspect. This is what happens when I put the first one in me. So the big thing being, if I've got this evidence of what happens when I put the first one in me, why do I put the first one in me? Now that was a little bit harder pill to swallow. Like you're insane, bro. Like you got a mountain of evidence what happens when you put the first one in me, but you don't have sound enough reasoning not to put the first one in you. And if you're suffering from this, then you need step two, right? And all the self knowledge of this illness of yourself as an alcoholic is not going to keep you into sound reasoning. Your own power is not going to do this. So uh, you need a power greater than yourself. And on 45 of the big book, it says like, so I requalify myself. If I have little control over the amount I take once I'm drinking or using, which is the physical aspect, the body part, or when I want to quit entirely, I cannot leave it alone and quit entirely, which is the mind aspect, then I'm probably suffering from something that only a spiritual experience or an entire psychic change, a change of mind, not a change of body. My body will always have the same reaction if I ever go to putting it back in me. But this process, and it tells me on 45, like lack of power is my dilemma, power of control, lack of capital P power. Uh, Obviously, but where and how am I to find this power, right? What tells me in the next sentence, that's exactly what this book about. Uh, this book is, it will enable you to find the power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. So I was like, okay, like I've had some certain circumstances where maybe when I was younger, I believed in God. Uh, Went through a thing in my late teens and early 20s where I was like, no, that ain't real. Like science explains it all. Um, and then I had this gunshot incident that had certain circumstances that made me a believer again. Like I am not going to go into detail about that, but all of that aside, believing in a power greater than myself, like God, whatever you want to call it, never kept me from drinking. So I was around these people, and these people in this book said that, hey, like this, like if this says this book will enable you to find this power, like that, therefore it's a power greater than myself. Like it's getting people sober. I can't get myself sober. So it's a power greater than little old me. So I use that. And it says, okay, the next requirement for step two is like you got to be willing that there is to believe that, or you got to believe or be willing to believe that there is a power greater than yourself. It's like, okay, yeah, I believe in God. That's check. Uh, and then it told me to look somewhere else. Like, so like this, this great reality is going to be found deep down within you. It's within you. The power is greater than you, but it's within you. It's only there that it may be found. I was like, okay, all right, I can get down with that with the help of a good sponsor. So I said, okay, I'm good. I'm gonna go on to step three. So then they hit me with this other stuff. It's like, okay, it's like this body and mind stuff. It's like if I want this spiritual experience that's going to recover from this illness, it's like I gotta make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. And it explains to me the actor that I've been running on my own self will. It kind of gives me some hints in the difference between self will and God's will. Like I want to run the show, and I'm afraid I ain't gonna get what I want or lose what I think I have or I have. and I try to arrange everybody in my show to get what I want. Like even in sometimes my motives are good. It's like basically you play God role, and it tells me that selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my problems in all its many forms: self-seeking, self-pity, dishonesty, fear, hundreds of forms of those of self-centeredness and selfishness, right? Self-delusion. Uh, so it tells me that all my problems are my own making. I was like, I don't know about that. Like, some of them probably are, but I had been so used to lying to myself and blaming everybody else that it was their fault to avoid feeling guilty about what I'd done to cause my problems. To even look at that, because like I don't know, it's just it overwhelmed me to actually take accountability for anything I've done. So it wasn't until later, but like I made this third step decision is like, first of all, we quit playing God. Like we can't reduce our selfishness and self-centeredness much by trying on our own power. We had to have God's help. So like hereafter in this drama of life, like it's real simple concept. Like God's going to be the director. What does the director do? He's behind the scenes. Nobody really sees him. You know what I mean? Like I asked y'all who your favorite director is. I don't know what my favorite movie is, but I don't know who directed. Like those guys are behind the scenes. They're directing me and telling me kind of like what to do, what not to do. He's the principal. I'm the agent. I didn't understand what that was, right? Like, what are you talking about? The guy that gets me detention? Like, I don't really understand. So I went in to look what that, and that's another relationship as director and actor. And basically, in a business relationship, a principal is someone else that's behind the scenes. An agent stands up and stands in place for the principal and shows up for him and does not take credit for any of the principal's work. It's like, I'm just the man. I'm the fill in. I'm going to show up in human form when the principal can't be here. And that's who I'm going to be when you see me. And I'm not going to take no credit for this, right? Uh, and then he's the father, and we're the children, right? So like most good ideas are simple, and this was the keystone. It's like I don't really know about all that, so I'll take this thing because I believe in this book. It says that I will. So like I need to get on the step. I'm gonna make this decision. I didn't really take it there. I turned my life over to that book. I said I'm gonna do exactly what it says. So I didn't really understand to all the extent that, and I didn't really believe that all my problems were my own making and they were out of my selfishness. But I made the decision anyway, and launched out on a course of vigorous action. Right. I had like alcohol was only a symptom, is what they said of the spiritual illness I had. I have a deeper spiritual. If I'm suffering from this, the only way to overcome my insanity, which means to drink again and to stay sane, that's a hot flame and I'm not going to touch it, is to make this decision and search out the things, the ways that my selfishness is causing these manifestations of self will. Like I had to look up what that means. This is how self will shows itself, right? If I'm resentful, I'm in self will, and I've probably in one or various forms of that self centeredness, and I'm causing this problem for my resentment. I didn't really believe it until I just done what it said, right? Like I had a good sponsor and he told me. So I searched out the flaws in just like any good business. If I'm running a business in a store and I don't go down there and take stock of what is selling and what ain't, what's working for me and what's not working for me, I'm going to go broke in that business, right? So like I'm glad that Bill put it in that way, in like a metaphor that I could understand, if that's the right word, metaphor, I don't know. But so that's what I done with my life. My business was living life and I was failing miserably. I was having problems with personal relationships. I couldn't control my emotional nature. I was prey to misery and depression. I couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. That was my life. And the only thing that gave me any kind of ease and comfort from that was the bottle. And all kinds of different bottles, pill bottles, whiskey bottles, moonshine bottles, all these different things. That's the only way I treated this spiritual illness that I was suffering from. when I got to the fourth column of the resentment inventory, this is the first time when I got about halfway through that fourth column that I started looking at that. I was like, damn, man, these some bitches are right. You know what I mean? Like everything. The reason I'm restless, irritable, and discontent all the time ain't because of Stephanie, ain't because of mom and dad, ain't because of the law, it ain't because of that judge. It's because of me. It's because of my selfishness, and that was eye opening for me. Like the truth sets you free. Like I didn't know the true nature of the problem, but when I knew and seen and had enough courage to look at the true nature of the problem that arose within myself, it's like now it's the only time I know what the solution to that problem is, right? So therefore, the truth set me free from the problem. Um, I looked at my fears and they said, like, this is what's driving everything, bro. Like, if you'll bracket it and every time fears cropped up in your resentment inventory, bracket that in there. And I started to see like it was. It said there ain't no connection between the two, but they were very connected when I looked at it. And I started connecting the dots and like what they were saying. Bro, you've been living on self propulsion and you've been so terrified that you're not going to get what you want or you're going to lose something that you think you have. You're not going to get forced satisfaction out of this life that this self-centered fear is driving everything that you do. Your every bit of your self-will and your reliance on self is what's causing this. So I'd made this decision. So the third step decision started to make a little bit more sense, right? And the sex inventory, same thing. And after every one of these inventories, it was giving me little hints. It's like, yeah, well, we're going to do our best to straighten this out in the future, right? We're going to go back and set these matters straight. I kind of glazed over that because I may have got overwhelmed by that ninth step again if I did. Uh, but when I got through the sex inventory and done an overhauling and how do we overhaul anything, overhaul a vehicle, I take apart each piece, right? I examine the piece and say, and subject each relation to the test in the same concept, looking at selfishness, dishonesty, inconsiderate behavior, right? That had caused problems in these personal relationships, right? And these each relation that I had, intimate or not, and all the harms that I'd done, right? So I didn't even really understand at this point that I was making this list for steps 8 and 9, but until I got there. But after I took the inventory and I shared my life story and my inventory with another person that knew what we were trying to do, that I was an alcoholic, that I suffer from a spiritual self will problem, and that these are the things that we're trying to identify in there. And we had that discussion. He helped me see some things that I just couldn't see, right? Some things about myself. And he made it, he made me so comfortable doing it, sharing his story and some of the things, the way he was like that, the way he struggled with those things, that it made me feel really comfortable opening up to this guy. I was so ashamed to, always wanted to let y'all see this actor. Wasn't nothing wrong. I've got everything, but I was scared to death that y'all would see the real me. After this fifth step, I seen the value of discussion and other people's perspective when it comes to this program, right? But up to this point, I've really I ain't really I've got behind three pertinent ideas. A, that I'm an alcoholic. I can't manage my own life. I got this body and mind thing. B, that no human power could relieve me of my alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were stopped. Like I've got behind three ideas is basically all I've done at this point. I've took a little bit of action and looking at, they tell me self will is my problem. If I'm going to make this decision, I got to start. The only way this is a decision if I take action and start by examining how I'm not making this decision in my day to day living. Because I told you I'm a believer, I'm good with God, this, that, and the other. But I was totally misusing my will and lying to myself, telling myself I wasn't. Uh, so the things I've seen in my inventory, I got to ask myself, like, because, like, to be honest with you, some of these character flaws that I've seen in my inventory, I was afraid to kind of let those things go. Like dishonesty served me pretty well. Seemed like it did. Pride, it seemed like a certain amount of it served me pretty well, right? But a lot of those things, when I looked real close, stepped on the toes of fellows and they retaliated. They didn't like it so much, right? And it was evident to me that they were causing all my problems. So I was like, okay, I don't know about this. I'm still kind of scared of the spiritual life, right? Look, but I made this decision. I can, at this point, I'm starting to have this spiritual experience. Like I'm starting to feel different about myself. And I haven't thought about alcohol or drugs for a little while. So like I've just taken a little bit of action. I've basically done an inventory by myself, and I've talked with one dude. And now here comes the kickers. Like I can't reduce my selfishness or self-centeredness on my own power, right? I can't fix these things myself. If I'm trying that, I gotta have God's help. And this is where, like, it was really evident that I can't fix prideful thinking with prideful thinking. I can't fix selfish thinking with selfish thinking. I gotta have God's help. I either gotta ask Him, humbly ask Him, to take these things from me and lead me on to better things. So after my hour meditation, after that fifth step, I looked at it. We discussed some character flaws and that was showing up pretty regular. And I went back and I'd done that hour meditation. I looked back at the first three steps. It said, look at the first five proposals, man. Make sure your work's solid so far. I was like, one, yes, I've got this body and mind thing. Two, yes, I believe and I'm taking the action. I've taken the other simple steps to enable me to find this power. Right. Three, I've made the decision. Oh, I made a decision to turn my will and life over to the care of God, or to this book. Not really God. I ain't really sincerely turned this over to whatever the power of the universe is, right? I don't know what that is. And before then, I had to understand what something was before I'm giving it any control over my life. I was scared to death it would make me more out of control. But I did it. I looked at it. I looked at those relationships again. I was like, can I live my life? Can I sincerely take a position that I'm going to be God in human form, and that when you see me or you meet me, you're not going to meet that guy that you know is trying to get you, or is out for his own ends, that's genuinely concerned about you and is wanting to be helpful, and is at least a little bit more concerned with you than he is himself. Am I going to be that guy? Can I be that guy? And will life be better if I do? Well, life was already getting better, so I made that decision, and I asked God, like my Creator, I'm now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character that stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellow. And the whole program started to make sense at this point. And I'd taken a little bit of action, but it says, okay, if I've done this, I've completed step 7. Now we need more action, bro. And this was the kickers. Like, man, I was still hesitant. Like it says, there may be some misgivings about this step, right? Like about going to some of these people. And there was, right? I was painstaking at that step. But I had enough experience and I'd followed it enough to that point that I thought, man, it started to make sense to me that this ain't really about a theory about God's going to save me. He's Santa Claus in the sky that grants me wishes and takes care of my life, because I wasn't buying that. That was some childlike shit that I wasn't buying, and I knew it. But that was as far as my conception of God had got. Like I get pissed off at you when I didn't get Christmas list, basically, right? Uh, and it started to make sense to me that this is just about misdirected will. This is just about misdirected instincts. And the key to this, if I really want to live up to this decision, is going out. Basically, and it tells me this, I'm trying to put my life in order, right? I still some self seeking shit going on when I'm first starting to make these amends. But the real purpose is to fit myself to be of maximum service to God. And it tells me, it's like, okay, it's like, well, now, like we briefly said this during your inventory, but it's like we've made a list of all persons we had harmed. Like when we did that when we took inventory, and I was like, oh, you mean them some bitches I was pissed off at, right? some of them I'm still pretty angry with, right? And I really, I wouldn't really, I'd started some forgiveness in my heart, but when I thought about it long enough, just like a true resentment, I thought about it, I'd replay that. And I'd start the old tricks of blaming them, avoiding taking a look at me. And they said, man, like, this is it. If you want to experience these promises that's promised to you, that's the exact opposite of problems with personal relationships. Can't control your emotional nature, prey to misery and depression, can't seem to be of real help to anybody, full of self pity. You made a decision. Are you gonna outgrow this fear that you have? And are you gonna stand before these people that you have done harm to? Regardless if they've done more harm to you than you perceive that you've done to them or not, are you gonna go back to these people? Like I'm talking about exes that I've cheated on, creditors that I've owed, people that I've hustled out of money out here on the streets, um, people all over Kentucky. Like if you'd told me, I was sitting here, it's like, are you going to do that? And it tells me, like, if you're not willing to do all these, like, just pray for the willingness until it comes, and start with. I had a good sponsor and done some recovery dynamic stuff, and they just like broke it down into like do the ones you're willing to do now, bro. Make you a 4 column list and like list the ones that you are willing to do, and then make a column for some laters, which maybe you owe restitution, you don't have that now, or maybe you've said you're sorry so many times that it's going to take a good demonstration of this change of behavior before that you even need to say you're sorry again and make amends, which may fall under later. And then some maybes. I don't know. I don't know if I'm willing to do that or not, or I don't know if it's going to cause more harm than good by doing it. Maybe I need to consult with somebody else uh, before doing this, because this time I'm just starting to get some sound reasoning and some sanity, and I'm starting to be able to differentiate the true from the false, right? Uh, my sponsor told me is like, because after step 7, I was like, man, I don't really feel much different, bro. Like I feel a little bit better, but I don't feel like he's taking it. And he told me, he's like, you will see the results of 6 and 7 when you take the actions of steps 8 and 9. That's when you'll see the results of 6 and 7. And you won't see them until you do, until you face your fears and face the people in your life that you caused harm to. You're not going to develop honesty. You're not going to develop selflessness. You're not going to develop any humility. You're not going to develop the courage that's necessary to properly use your will the way this things. And you're not going to eliminate the self centeredness that you have. I think that's what Bill was talking about. Like this, the destruction of self centeredness is what this program is about. Like this ain't about me. This is about other people. I'm trying to fit myself to be of maximum service to other people and to God. Like I'm trying to truly live up to sincerely what that third step decision said. So I started, and then I had a list over here for never, and there were several people on that list. I had one, and there's really good directions on here, and the 12 and 12 helped me out with this too, because basically it kind of can make me connect the dots even more. It talks about on page 80 in the 12 that it says, since defective relations with other human beings have been the immediate cause of all my woes or problems, including my alcoholism, it says, since defective relations were the cause of my alcoholism. How the hell did that work? Defective relations changed my body and mind. Like I wasn't sure how that way. It says, so since defective relations have been the immediate cause of nearly all my woes, including my alcoholism, no field of investigation could be more worthwhile than to an investigation on how I harm people, right? And it identifies different kinds of harms. If I really want to get into it, physical harm, easy. Maybe I pulled somebody's hair, or punched them in the mouth, or something like that. That's easy. Stepped on their toes, literally, right? Physical is pretty easy to spot. And then it says mentally. How do I step on the toes of fellows that cause these defective relationships with other people, and I identified a whole lot of those things. Maybe it's your sarcasm. Maybe they get a hint that they think you're better or you're smarter than them, and maybe that makes people feel less than. Maybe it damages their self esteem, and that's definitely not what God wants you to do, bro. And then a whole list like emotional. How do I cause emotional harm to people? And I've done this kind of investigation like for a long time. It's like how, and I still do it. It's like how do I step on the toes of my people and then cause them to retaliate? Because like seemingly without reasons, like they pop off and say something or do something to me, and always if I'm checking myself, I've done something in the past, made a decision based off of self in one of its many forms. I've stepped on people's toes and they retaliate. So this is what I started looking at. And spiritual. How do I cause spiritual harm to other people? Right? How do I do that? And I started looking at these things within myself. What are my thoughts, my words, and my actions? How do they manifest where they cause these four types of harm to people? Right? If I'm really trying to live the spiritual life, and that's what it is. If I'm really trying to live up to this third step decision, I do more of this like, and it directs me that through all the directions. It's like, there's some good things it warns me about doing. It's like, and I run into this. It's like, if some people I probably need not go to on a spiritual basis that I've done some wrongs to. Right? They don't want to hear about me. I found religion, and I'm on doing God's will, and that's why I'm trying to make these things better. Like you probably just want to leave that alone. And if it's better safe than sorry, like I don't want to use this as a crutch to not talk about my dependence on my creator. I want people to know, but if it's not going to serve good purpose, and I start to develop even more subtle ways to differentiate. I start to develop discernment. What's right and what's wrong, right? Like what would God want me to do, and what's God's will, what's self will, and I do start to experience like way more times where I need to use patience and understanding and less judgment. Sometimes I just need to use forgiveness, right? It tells me that I need to go to my enemies, even the ones that's like, those are probably more useful to me that I need to go to. The ones that I don't need to go to, I feel like I don't need to go to, or I'm not going to go to, those are probably the ones I need to. Worse than anything, those guys that really done me wrong, or girls that like it really don't matter. It tells me, like if I ain't going to face these creditors, right? Like, and it tells me to work out the best deal I can with those, right? Work out the best deal you can. And do not shy away from telling them about my drinking because they probably know or my using because I'm not trying to save face at this point. I'm trying to fit myself to be of maximum service. If I've had extramarital affairs, and I'm not ever been married, but I've been in committed relationships, at least where I told them I was committed, right? I'd never been a real partner in a relationship. And it says it can't give no rule there, but it's got some guiding forces there. It directs me to consult with other people. But I have this list. I go back and I make even more extensive list on the things that didn't show up in my inventory. Well, I start making these nows in these columns that I was talking about, like the ones I was willing to now, the ones I wasn't willing to. I start praying for the willingness until it comes. Right, I'm gonna continue to pray for it until it comes, and I start to develop some God confidence or some courage once I see how these things are starting to make my life better. The fear starts to go away. I can be the real me. I could start to develop a little bit of humility, a whole lot of courage, right? Uh, and I'm never going to be able to do what it requires of me in step 10 if I don't really learn, if I don't really take the action to do it. Step 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? I'm not going to be able to have those discussions. I'm not going to be able to make amends quickly. Uh, it's more about the behaviors, right? Like, and I went through this. I live in a small town in Kentucky, and I'll give you some of my experience with some of these amends that I've made. Like, I just pulled up in here. I live about 5 blocks down, and I don't get very good service at my house, right? Uh, I was afraid it may be cutting in and out, and the hell, it may be doing that anyway. But I thought, well, I'm gonna ride up here to this church, and I'm gonna sit in this parking lot up here, and I know I can get better service. It's up there on a little bit higher place. When I get up there, and I won't lose service on my phone. I get ready to pull in this church parking lot here, and I'm like, oh shit! So that thought enters my mind. Damn, that the neighbor's probably gonna think I'm over here doing dope. Yeah, I know that's what they're gonna think, right? About halfway through his Zoom meet, the law's gonna pull up and say, "What are you doing here, man?" And I'm like, "Oh shit!" And I was like, "Well, this is what you've decided to do, and you're not doing dope, so like, go ahead and do it, bro." Like I sit here, and as soon as I back in here, this lady pulls out from this house over here and pulls over here and rolls the window down and said, "Can I help you?" And she looks at me and she says, "Hey, how you doing?" And I couldn't even tell you what her name is, but it's a small town. She knew me. She knew my sister. She was like, she said, "Are you still doing good?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "I've got 15 years." I was like, "Well, I got 6 now." And she was like, we sit here and talk for a few minutes. And I was like, "Man, this is for making amends to the people in my community, right? I don't have nothing." She said, "Well," I said, "I'm getting ready to do this Zoom meeting, like actually talk on steps 8 and 9 here." And she was like, "Oh, well, ain't no problem. I thought you was here to maybe get these. There were some donations that some people didn't show up and get. And I thought that maybe you were one of them." And I was like, "Oh." She said, "Well, go ahead, do it. Come up here anytime you want to." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Man, this program's good. These steps 8 and 9 are really good. Yeah, I ain't got nothing to be afraid of here." Even though my mind kicks in sometimes, I'm like, "Oh man, my past can catch up with me right here. I'm gonna have to sit here and explain the law when I'm doing when I'm talking to these people on Zoom that I don't even know half of them." Right. So, uh, good thing. When I got arrested, this last time, God, I've been arrested. I don't know. I've had probably 20 AIs, 6 DUIs. I've had 2 trafficking in methamphetamines. Like I said, my spiritual malady manifested with all kinds of stuff. Like you name it, I probably done. Uh, when they arrested me in 2016, the very last time I was arrested, uh, I had 2 or 3 grams of heroin and about an 8 ball, 3.5 grams of crystal meth. And I'd been up for like 20 days, and I already had a warrant, and I knew they was looking for me. And I was like, I hadn't been sleeping like 20 days. Like, and I was down here at the store, and I was trying to pump gas, and I had a bunch of money and stuff like dope money, and like the guy was like, I couldn't count the money. I was trying to count my money. He's like, "Yeah, get that gas." Like, "Now, how much you're at the gas pump? Like, can I help you?" He's like, "Yeah, well, no." And I tried to start counting my money, and I said, "Wow," and stoned. I kept losing place, so I'd start over. And he's like, "What? How much do you want?" And I had a bunch of 20s, and he was like, "How about 20?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I go out there and I get in the vehicle, and this dude, like, I sit out there for I don't know how long, and he comes out and pumps my gas for me, right? He hits the side of my vehicle and is like, "And I take off?" And he must have went straight in and called the police, right? And by the time I made it down the road, the police pulled me over. Well, I had these 2 packs made up in the fingers of latex gloves. So, like, when I got pulled over, I knew like I'm gonna have to try to make it in with these, like, in this money. So I clipped the money in my underwear, and I suitcased that stuff, like the big graphic about it. Like, I don't know if you know what suitcasing is, but I suitcased it, keistered it, whatever you want to say. And this guy wrote me up for DUI, right, and took me to jail, like, and went in there. So, like, when I got in there, it's like I was like, okay, like, I'm gonna have to. They're gonna find this money if they strip search me, and they're gonna get me for trafficking if I go in here. So, like, long story short, like, I told them I had some dope. I give them the dope. They didn't find the money. I figured I ain't gonna get a possession charge. Like, I sit in jail for a long time, and when I got indicted for 16 grams of meth. Like, and it had a picture, like, and like, of course, I went and done my time, like, about a year or so in jail, and like, asked for treatment. Didn't believe it worked, but like, stayed there long enough and worked these steps to try to eat some cheeseburgers and chew some tobacco before I went and done that time. And about halfway through the 4 steps, when I said, man, this may work. Like if I do this may work. Well, I get out of that treatment center a year later. So this has been 2.5 years since this has happened. I come back home, and every time that I'm leaving around, like every time I see the police, it's like man, I don't know. I felt like I was gonna get pulled over. I was full of fear, like you're gonna get this. And I started talking to my kid's mom at the time. She was like, and she knew enough about the program, me talking to her, and I started talking to my sponsor about what's going on with me. I was like, man, I'm afraid they're going to pull me over and set me up again because like he literally added weight to my stuff. And my sponsor was like, why don't you make amends to him? And I was like, what do you mean make amends to him? Like, I didn't do nothing to him. Like he's the one that. And he was like, well, let me ask you this, bro. When he pulled you over and asked you if you had any dope, did you lie to him? I was like, yeah. I didn't tell him I had it for sure. And he said, well, let's just start with that. You could just tell him that you lied to him. You're sorry for it. Are you sorry for it? I was like, oh, I'm sorry I got in trouble. And so, like, we talked a little bit about it, and I didn't think much more about it. He said, well, it was kind of inconsiderate. Like, you didn't even really think about, like, how it made his job harder, did it? Like, running around there, ain't been sleeping 20 days, and like running all over like a tornado through your town and stuff like that. And I was like, well, so I wrote some inventory on it. And I don't know, about 2 or 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in the grade school. I'm going to my sons, and this is the first time I started doing this shit in a long time. Is like my son's has his Thanksgiving dinner at his school in the cafeteria, and I'm sitting down with his mom and him, and he's like 6 years old, and we're sitting there eating like cafeteria turkey or whatever and dressing, and this cop that set me up comes in and sits down with his kid over there. And my kid's mom was like, hey, there's dude, like you should go talk to him. And I was like, no, like he's with his kid. I'm not gonna do that. And she was like, yeah, you're gonna regret it if you don't, man. It's like you should. You should just go talk to him, like man to man. Like, and I was like, well, no, he's with his kid. By the time I said that, he gets up, takes his tray over, and he starts walking out. She's like, man, just follow him outside. And I was like, okay. So I just got up, just on like, okay, I wasn't trying to fit myself to be a maximum service. My pride, some of that good and bad stuff I turned over to God kind of kicked in. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. So I walked outside, and like, and this guy's walking down by the time I catch up with him, he's walking down the sidewalk, and I knew enough about the programs. Like, I don't bring up nothing he's done. I'm just here to clean up my side of the street, stick to my behaviors. So he's walking down the sidewalk, and I hollered at him. It's like, hey, dude, hey. And I called him by his name. And he was like, he turned around and he's like, he didn't know what to expect. Like, I don't even know if he'd like Barney Fife me and grabbed his gun or some stuff. Like, but he like went, like, you could tell he was startled. He didn't know what this conversation was about to go to. And I said, hey, man, it's like, listen, I want to talk to you. I owe you an amends. Like, when you pulled me over, man, like I flat out lied to you. You asked me if I had any dope. I told you no. And like I was inconsiderate, totally selfish. I wasn't concerned with nobody else other than myself, like in what I wanted. And and like I didn't really consider that I was making your job harder, like me running and stuff like that. But I'm sorry about that, man. It's like, and I don't really know what I could do to make it right, but I just wanted to let you know that like that I do feel bad about, and I started to actually mean it then. And he looks at me, he's like, well, man, I ain't never got this before. And I was like, he said, are you doing good? I was like, yeah, I'm sober, trying to stay sober, man, work 12 steps, this, that, and the other. I'm just trying to straighten my life up and do this. And like, I literally walked away thinking, like, dickhead. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really, I feel like the same way about it. But something crazy happened. And the next time I got in the vehicle, I noticed like the police got right behind me and the fear was no longer there. Right. And like, and this guy waves at me. He probably told his cop buddies, right? And this, that, and the other. It's one of the most powerful amends that I've made, and all because of somebody that I felt like he done me way more wrong and he was like an enemy, like a lot of old beliefs around like criminal justice people that I had like abolished with that amends. Like, and I felt like it fitted myself to be more uniquely useful to God, to the people about me. Uh, another quick one is is this deal with my parents. Like a lot of these things is like it tells me like with the family, I'm it's a long period of reconstruction. I've been a tornado in these people's lives, and it's clear on these directions. Like you know, their defects may be glaring, but it's like I've probably done something in the past to them. But I sit down with them and frankly analyze the past, right? Like, and when I talked to my dad and my sister, I was like, hey, I done this and this and this, all these behaviors, and I'm sorry for it. I hurt you in this way and this that way. And then I just kind of opened it up and left it open. I was like, and listen, like, there's probably a whole lot of other ways that I've harmed you that you may not even feel comfortable like talking to me about right now. But I don't want to do those things to you anymore either. Like, so you would be helping me out and helping. Maybe I won't do it to other people. Maybe it'd make me aware of how I do these things to other people. And that carried a lot of weight, and it offered that space for us to sit down and frankly analyze the past, not just the way I was seeing it, the way they seen it too. And not right in that moment did they tell me, but later on when they seen that it's like, hey, he's not a little eggshell that we got to cradle, like he can handle it. We probably need to tell him like some things that bothered us, like, and in that sense really did like uh help us repair the past. Like, stopping drinking ain't enough. It's like this is about properly using my will, and there's not. And I start to develop tact, discernment, humility, and see the results of step 6 and 7 if I genuinely have enough courage to look at this. And if somebody else is involved, I really got to discuss these things and seek guidance from my creator. Like, is this the right thing, and discern, is this the right thing to do? Is this going to cause more harm? And I got to be self-aware enough to know when it, or is this just you trying to avoid making this amends, bro? It's like, is that what it is here? But I don't know. I hope this helps somebody. But it's like this is the nuts and bolts of the program, and this is where I show up for God. Like people like, and this is the message. Like even when I get to step 12, right? I do more carrying of the message with my actions and just showing up for God and being what I think He would have me to be. He's behind the scenes, and most people that know me will tell you, it's like, man, it's like I got program work for him, just like that lady here. Like I have never even talked to her. But she come up here and she's heard enough. That's like, man, are you still doing good? Like, it's things, programs working for you, and I've never even talked to her about it. But man, that's the power of God's will. And it's God's will. It's not a theory. It ain't about what I believe in. It's about properly using my will and finding out and searching out fearlessly and thoroughly with specific attention to detail how I'm in self will. That's the only way it works. And then I carry the message with my feet instead of my mouth. Every once in a while, I may have to say some shit, but my actions speak a whole lot louder than words. I'd like to think anyway. And I'm by no means no saint, but I know this program works, so try to work it and follow the directions as carefully as I can. So uh, I appreciate you guys. I hope this has helped somebody. Like I usually like to cover the first whatever steps I'm speaking on. Like this is what I had to realize just how hopeless I was as an alcoholic before I was willing to take a look at all these things and actually do all the hard things to live the spiritual life, right? Like if I wasn't convinced by my own experience and by the experiences of others and by experience of the writers of the big book, just how hopeless I was without me identifying and changing my will, my thoughts and my actions, there's no way I would have done it. But I'm extremely grateful that I did and it played out like it is. And and hopefully I can help convince somebody else, with my actions. So thank you guys.